He's also the newest poker coaching coach. He's a phenomenal cash game player, and today we're going to be talking about cash games a bit. So, hello, Brad. Are you here? Can you hear me? Good. Perfect. All right. So, first things first. Some people may not know you, even though you have an amazing podcast. Make sure everyone go there and check it out right now. Make sure you listen to every episode. They're all great. Who are you? Where'd you come from?
For a living. I fell into it kind of like a lot of people do. Just I saw Moneymaker on TV and I thought, yeah, I can do that. And yeah, I guess I did. That's the short version. There's much longer versions if you want to ask any questions about the stages of my journey.
Actually, we're having people saying they cannot hear Brad. Okay, you can hear them now. All right. So Brad's on his phone internet today. We've had a few technical issues. We are going to make it work. Brad's name is Brad. He plays poker some. Okay. So
Yep.
you, as far as I know, you played a lot of cash games, right? That's how you kind of rose up the stakes. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so cash games have always resonated with me for whatever reason. I have played tournaments, and I may have like 100K or so tournament cashes over my lifetime, just like messing around on absolute poker back in the day. But yeah, like I've loved the flexibility of cash where I can just show up. I can play for 6, 7, 8 hours. If I feel tired, I can quit. The flexibility element is one of the reasons why I sought out poker as an occupation in the first place, and cash has just always meshed very well with me. And maybe it's a little bit of romanticism too, that my favorite players have always been cash game players. I've just always had so much respect for those guys, like the Patrick Antoniuses that just play cash at the nosebleeds, the Galfons. That to me is like, it's one thing to be playing cards for, a multi-table tournament for like $1 million, a final table. It's another to be playing like with $1 million stack, right? Of your own money. That's just always seemed really cool to me.
For sure. So when you were rising up through the cash game ranks, were there any breakthroughs you had that helped you go from beating small stakes to beating the high stakes? Was there like some transition period in there, something you learned?
So what's funny is like I started such a long period of time ago that like I was playing 10-20 limit on a boat to nowhere. And then just one day they were like, oh, we're going to spread no limit today, which was like, fuck yeah. Or sorry, I don't know how you feel about cussing. It was like, sweet. Like I get to play no limit. I was excited. So I sign up and like, it's 5-10 no limit. So like basically I go from like 10-20 limit to 5-10 no limit straight off the bat. And like, even on party poker, the games were all limit. So it was like 15-30 limit. No limit cash tables weren't even introduced until like, the following year. So like the breakthroughs that I made, I mean, I transitioned very quickly because that was like how it was done back then. I don't know about breakthroughs. There were just some moments in my career where I just realized that like I have a gift at this. I don't know if that makes any sense, but one hand in particular was that I played forever ago. This was probably 2005. I was 21 years old. One of my first times in a casino. I just remember getting a physical tell on a guy and winning a pot that most people would not have won at that time just through paying attention and collecting data points. And I think that was one of the first moments that was like, I think I can do this. I can put all these pieces together, the poker puzzle in a way that most guys that I was playing against just couldn't. So I think the first breakthrough for me was just my confidence. It was seeing that I was doing things other folks weren't doing and being confident enough to say that like, okay, I'm going to, really bear down and try to be the best version of myself that I can be.
For sure. This brings me to a few points. I remember a while back I was doing a webinar with Phil Hellmuth about how he won a World Series of Poker bracelet. We went through a bunch of hands. And he was talking to me about how, like, essentially, look, you've played poker a long time. You're paying attention. You should probably be trusting your reads more. Because I'm kind of a math player to some extent. But, like, I see things. I'm aware of tells and whatnot, right? And I decided, all right, next time I'm just going to go with, like, every read I have. And I think I like won the tournament or something. I made some insane reads that just like, they all worked. And of course, there's probably a lot of variance in there. But if you do have good reads and you're focusing and paying attention and you know your reads are actually good or better than break even, you probably should be trusting them. And I think that's something a lot of people don't do. Like you'll see people say, oh, I should have made the big fold there. And sometimes they're just talking, but sometimes they know they actually should have made a slightly big fold. Another thing, going back to party poker back in the day, I was playing the limit games back then too. And remember, like 30-60 was the biggest limit game, and they just introduced like 2-4 no limit. That was the big no limit game. So for you to go from 10-20 limit to 5-10 no limit, that may sound to some listeners here who don't know limit hold'em like you're moving down in stakes or something. But really, that's like a gigantic jump up in terms of money at risk. Like at 10-20 limit hold'em, a bad session may be like minus, what? I don't know, like $1,000 or something.
600.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I haven't played since 2004.
Yeah, like a bad session would be minus $1,000, whereas a bad 5-10 session is like minus $5,000. So substantial jump up, but none of us knew any better back then. And fortunately, none of the players had a clue what was going on. And if you were decent at poker, you would certainly do pretty well. So
yeah.
Okay.
No, I was just gonna say, like you mentioned going with your reads, and I've always been an intuitive player where I just kind of trust my instincts, and not that those instincts haven't been honed on, thinking, discussing, having conversations about the game of poker. But like for me, the time to prepare for poker is off the tables with my friends, just discussing strategy. And then when you're in the arena, that's the time to perform. And so because always been an intuitive player, and that's led me to a lot of success, I've always felt comfortable just making a read, going with it, and living or dying with the consequences.
So him to Ashes here in the chat says, okay, be naturally talented. Got it. Easy game. And unfortunately, that's something that's kind of difficult to teach. And to be fair, I don't think I am naturally talented at poker at all. I think I'm good at studying and good at learning. And you can study and learn any math-based game to some extent, or psychological-based games. It's just a matter of putting in the effort. But you say you are an intuitive player to some extent. How do you go about teaching other people to develop good intuition? Assuming they probably don't think they have that.
So to me, intuition is just your, it's just your map of making sense of the game. And it's done at the subconscious level. So like teaching somebody to have a higher level of intuition is really just, drilling on the fundamentals, focusing on the specific quantifiable data points that guide you in making decision after decision, and seeing them for what they are, making sense of them, and then choosing the decision that just makes logical sense. So honing your intuition is just like, it's like muscle memory in football, basketball. You're just doing a lot of practicing, a lot of drilling on very specific data points. And then when you encounter those data points in the wild, because, if you're playing online cash and you have 6 tables, you don't have a lot of time to be dilly-dallying and messing around and really just like investing a ton of conscious cognitive energy into your decisions. Like sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. So to me, it's just like put in the reps, develop the muscle memory, and then perform when you get to the arena.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're trying to ride a bicycle. If you know how to ride a bicycle, you just get on the bicycle and go. You don't have to think, okay, left foot goes down, right foot goes up, hold on to the handlebars. Like, you don't have to think about all of that stuff. I mean, I was playing a tournament the other day online, and there's a spot deep in the tournament where I had like a bad bluff catcher or something, and I don't know why, but everything in my head was just screaming call with the bad bluff catcher. And I don't know why I called, but I called. The guy was bluffing, and I won all the chips, right? And a lot of the time that does happen where you've been in scenarios kind of like this. Maybe there was some weird timing tell. Maybe there was something on the heads-up display that made you think, this guy's a little bit loose and aggressive. They're going to be bluffing more often than normal. It was like a lot of little things that you have a difficult time picking up on while you're actually playing. But if you go back and analyze it, maybe you can figure it out. And that's kind of the intuition to some extent, is just being in these scenarios over and over and over again to the point that you see patterns over and over.
Right. And it could even be something as simple as like a timing tell, right? Like this guy took a different amount of time to make this decision than I've seen him take in other spots where maybe he's had a good hand. And like if he's polarized and you get that timing tell, I mean, that could be the difference between like calling with a bluff catcher or folding your bluff catcher. So like, it's seeing all of the available data points, trying to quantify them to the best of your ability, and then pulling the trigger.
For sure. So if you are, in your mind, mostly an intuitive player, do you think that translates well enough to online, or are you forced to play only live games?
Oh, no. So, I mentioned party poker, right? That was a long time ago, and then I played online poker for until Black Friday. As a full-time player, I played some home games, but really that was just like messing around in my local area. But all the same principles are there, right? All the same data points from live poker are there online. Like there are timing tells. There are times where like you just know that somebody is bluffing based on how long they took to make their decision. And I mean, you don't get to look at them in the face, but the data points are still there to allow yourself to make these decisions. And, don't get me wrong. Like I'm not 100% intuitive, right? I think that like this was my nature of having a high emotional IQ at the beginning of poker was what allowed me to say, I can do this, right? Like, because understanding that you can do something is a pretty pivotal step in your career, because that means, okay, I can do this. Now, what do I do next to start improving? And then that involves a lot of theory work. It involves a lot of line work. It involves a lot of reflection and understanding and honing, but really just, knowing that you're capable of doing something in this game and making a living at it for, potentially decades. That was a giant motivator to me. It's harder when you don't know if you can do it or not, right? If you don't have the capabilities. So yeah, when I say intuitive, that's what I mean. Like early on, I realized that just logically, I could figure things out in a way that the other players weren't. Therefore, I knew I had an edge, and also motivated me to drill down on the fundamentals and, just try to make the most of my ability.
Awesome. So you were playing poker, things were going well enough. What made you decide to make the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast and website and email list and everything that goes along with that?
Yeah. So this is, quite a few things happened, but the reason that I made the podcast originally was to promote some silly platform that I believed in that inevitably fell through. But they paid everybody back. It was like, whatever. It was whatever. It was the first time I had been excited about promoting a thing. And then once it had kind of fallen apart, what I realized was whenever I did these interviews, these conversations with people that I respect in the poker community, I felt good afterwards. Like I would end the Zoom call and I would feel really good. And then I was getting feedback from my guests that was like, man, you're really good at this. Like this was a really enjoyable experience. I'm really glad that you invited me on. And so I started realizing like, I still enjoy this thing, even though it's costing me money and I have no plan behind each episodes, but I still enjoy it. And two, the relationships that I've been able to build. I mean, I can DM Jason Kuhn, like I can DM Matt Berkey, and get a response, right? Like these guys I can reach out to them. They respond back to me and like, we can discuss strategy, we can discuss business. And that's just really freaking cool. So like, even if the podcast never made any money, just the networking, I'm here talking to you because of the podcast, right? Like, and that's just networking in action. So because I enjoyed it so much, because the audience enjoyed it so much, and because I saw it as a massive networking opportunity, it was like, okay, let's keep this thing going. And then once the decision was made to like keep it going, I'm spending like, 20 hours a week on all the things, just releasing these episodes. And at some point I realized, like, how is this going to work now that you don't have a business model behind this? Like, what's going to happen next? And either A, some sponsor appears, out of the wilderness to give me some money to make episodes, which is very unlikely to happen in this climate of online poker right now. Or B, I just make my whole thing and go 100% into coaching, training, helping make an impact into folks' poker journeys. And that was ultimately what I chose to do. I chose to build a business behind the podcast so that I could keep doing it because it resonates with me. It fulfills my number one value, which is impact. And I just realized that, like, if I'm going to make it, I've got to do it all myself. And once I accepted that responsibility, that was what led to increasing training, writing sales copy, and all the other things.
That sounds kind of like my journey with poker coaching to some extent. I was not making much money from it for many years, and I just enjoyed helping the community. It's almost like it's a community service. I've been fortunate in poker, and I'm happy to give back. And like you said, you'd be happy to do it for free to some extent because you are learning a ton about it, or a ton from other people who are crushing poker and crushing life, right? And making good connections is very, very important. And I think a lot of people view poker as sort of a solo game where you are going to go study by yourself, you're going to play by yourself, and you're going to win or lose by yourself. But it turns out if you have a group around you of people who are helping you improve and helping you get through tough times and all of that, it's going to be a whole lot easier, and you're probably going to get a whole lot better. If you look at like every good high-stakes poker player, they have like a clique around them of other good high-stakes poker players who study the game with them and help them improve. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's not just that either. Like, this is what I'm coming to learn. Like, as I go through this journey, like, longer and longer, I start seeing these other factors that influence our success as poker players. And like, here's a funny one that I brought up. I mentioned Jason Kuhn earlier, and specifically him because we just recorded a conversation for release on the podcast in a couple of months. But like, one stat line that he had was in 2016 when he met his girlfriend, who's now his wife. He had 2.5 million in tournament winnings. In 2018, he had 18 million. And in 2020, he's got over 30 million. And that came directly because of the relationship that he has with his now wife, which has nothing to do with poker, right? It's like she's the best poker coach in the entire universe, but is not coaching any poker. And it's just like, the logistical side of the equation as a poker player. Like, how are you taking care of yourself? How are you approaching your occupation and your profession as a job? Like, this relates to your results on the felt. Are you managing your mental game? Like, are you in a good headspace when you fire up your sessions? Are you resilient when things go against you? Are you able to recover quickly so that you can put more volume in at the tables and play longer sessions? I mean, all of these things are directly related to your success at the poker table. And one of the main benefits of having friends and discussing poker with other people is that, like, Jonathan, you have a long career, right? You've thought about this game a lot and you have your perspective, and that is yours. I have a different perspective, right? And I've also been in poker for a very long time, and I've seen a lot of things. And when we share our perspectives, doors start opening that we never even saw before. And that allows us to just explore further, where we would never see those doors if we're just attacking this on, from our one sample size. So like, the more people that you add to your circle, the more perspectives you get, the more doors that open, and then you just become a better poker player really quickly as a result.
For sure. I actually have two collaborative books, Excelling at No Limit Hold'em and Excelling at Tough No Limit Hold'em Games. You can get the new one at jlpoker.com/tough, I think. And it's just a collaborative book with me and like 10 or 15 other world-class poker pros, where I basically interviewed them about their area of expertise. And to be able to easily talk with other people, and they'll share with you the knowledge they've learned through their years and years of study about the thing that they are best at. That's just like it lets you leapfrog everybody else who's working hard to do all that study too. And there are many, many aspects of life. I mean, someone says, how can your wife possibly help you be better at poker? But like you said, if you have a bad relationship when it comes to poker, like say your significant other hates poker and you want to play poker, it's probably not going to go so well either for poker or for your relationship, just right off the bat. But even if your significant other is like kind of supportive, it'll go fine. But if they're really supportive, like they never give you problems for doing your job, playing poker, right? And they help you with planning, they take care of the things that wouldn't otherwise be a distraction, like that alone is very beneficial. And also they just like give you peace of mind in many, many aspects of life, and that's highly valuable. And
yeah.
I think a lot of people don't recognize that, because to be fair, a lot of people, I venture to say the vast majority of poker players who are not winning money, their significant other probably doesn't like poker all that much because they're spending a lot of time away from them and they're not winning any money. So they're probably only having a tough time, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like
there's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than being on a downswing that you can barely handle on your own, and then having a significant other that reduces your resiliency in the downswing because you know that you have to tell them, right? Like, then it's just like a double whammy. Basically, like, in my opinion, when you have a supportive significant other on your poker journey, you're happy off the felt, right? There's somebody that you can trust and you're happy, which means that you live a more fulfilling life when you're not playing cards, which just ultimately means that like your identity is no longer just as a poker player. And when your identity is only a poker player, like this game will break almost anybody. No matter how strong you are, you will get broken in this game. And the differentiator from like a medium performer and the high performers is how quickly you can recover. Like, how resilient are you and how quickly can you recover? And when you have somebody that you can trust, that's in your corner, that you're doing things with outside of poker, that give you that separate identity that, you know, you love, like all of a sudden, when you start playing cards, when you lose, you're not a loser, right? Like, you're not just a failure, waste of a human being. Like, because you have other things that you're working towards, right? And other aspects of your life that give you joy and give you happiness. So like that to me is the benefit of having a supportive person in your corner that you trust, that is, just gives you a better life experience. Because like I learned early on, I think maybe it was like Doyle's book of short stories, or maybe it was the Godfather book. I can't remember, but I know it was Doyle specifically, because there was a time his daughter passed away in the early 80s, unexpectedly. And he didn't win at poker for 2 years. And when you're struggling, when you're going through a season of sadness and trauma in your life, you're not going to win at cards. Like, you can just, if you have, you can call me and show me your results and tell me what was going on and prove it to me. I'll say, okay. But for the most part, like, there's a direct correlation between how much you're suffering in your day-to-day life and then how resilient you are at the poker table. And then how that, when you're not resilient, are you going to tilt? Are you going to make bad decisions? Are you going to make mediocre decisions and then not even care to investigate them because it's not worth your energy at the moment? All these things are related and compound. And so, yeah, I think this is, you can't overstate the importance of living a happy and fulfilled life and how that's going to impact your results playing cards.
For sure. And I mean, I always make a point whenever I'm going to go play poker to get like everything off of my plate before I go to play poker. That means not having to deal with my significant other because they know I'm going to be playing poker. It means taking care of all the various work emails. It means not having anything else like on my mind distracting me. It means not betting on sports while I'm sitting there playing poker with the TV right in front of me so I'm distracted, right? It really means just being able to easily focus on poker while I'm sitting there playing poker instead of having a million other things going on. And having a good relationship is one of the main things that takes people's attention throughout their whole life. And it can either be something that's like a good positive thing, or it can be a very negative thing. Someone said that if you have a negative relationship and they don't like poker, it's probably not going to work out anyway. Maybe it means poker or the relationship, I'm not sure.
Both.
But like, a lot of people are in relationships that are not necessarily great for them because I guess they get complacent to some extent. Like they're happy enough, or maybe they don't want to go through the effort of finding someone else, or maybe they don't like confrontations. So they're just going to stick with that scenario for forever, whatever, right? And I mean, I'm not going to tell everybody just go out there and get rid of all of their relationships. But if you're in a lot of bad relationships that are either not productive or dragging you down, you can probably do better.
Or not only can you do better, maybe they can find somebody that's a better match, right?
Yeah.
Like it could be better for both sides. And there's such emotionally driven creatures, human beings, and we don't even realize how emotionally driven we are. And like, fear, like you said, they're afraid of being alone, afraid that you won't find somebody else, afraid of whatever. Like all of these things they impact your mental state while you're playing cards. Because if you have nothing, if you are a blank page and you've got no responsibilities in life, this game is still hard on you mentally and emotionally if you're doing it as your sole profession. So like, even if you have no negatives, it's still hard. When you have like built-in negatives that are dragging you down regularly, you're just drawing dead. It's just so hard to be successful. You're just fighting an unnecessary battle. And there's nothing wrong too. Like maybe poker makes your relationship with your significant other worse, and maybe you ought to not play poker. That's an option as well too, right? Especially if that negative relationship is causing you to be a losing poker player and it's causing you unhappiness. Like, you can get rid of poker too, right? You don't have to ditch your wife for poker. You can just get rid of poker and upgrade that way.
I mean, interestingly enough, this happened with me with Magic the Gathering, another game that I like. It's like a hobby that can take as much time as you want to put into it, kind of like poker, where I'm not making any money from it because nobody makes any money from it. It's just like purely for fun. And at some point, you just have so many things going on in life. Like I like to play poker. I have my poker training site, and I have 2 kids, and I have my wife who I want to spend time with. It's like, all right, I don't have time to go spend 10 hours a week playing this thing that is not really productive, that doesn't make any money, that I like, but I don't have time for it right now in life. And sometimes you just don't have time for something in life if it's not actually productive, and you have to say goodbye to it for a little while, or maybe for forever. So you say goodbye to it for a little while, and you don't play it for a while, and that's okay. It's okay. You can still, follow it or have a hobby, but you have to be careful with some things like poker that can really take all of your time and all of your money if you let it. So you have to be smart with what your actual priorities are in life. I mean, I talked to my students about this the other day on my show with a little coffee, where I said you need to figure out what you want out of life and figure out how to go about getting it, right? And if you say you want to be a good poker player, but you also have a lot of bills each month you have to pay because that's just how your life is lined up. You have 3 kids who you want to go to their baseball game and their soccer game and their violin recital and all this, and you have a husband or a wife, and that takes a lot of your time, and you have a job. It's like, look, hate to break it to you, you're not going to be the best poker player in the world just because you're not going to ditch your family. You're not going to ditch your job. You're going to still have to pay your bills because of the situation you're in. And you can be decent at poker, but you're probably not going to be the best poker player in the world just because that's not how your life is set up at all. Someone mentioned earlier, like, can you still get good at poker if you are 40 years old? And I think you're going to have a tougher time because you probably have a lot of other things going on in life compared to young people. Because you see a lot of young people get decent at poker quickly, but that's because they have nothing going on. I mean, all they have going on is college, and a lot of them just ditch college. I mean, I basically ditched college to study poker, and, it resulted in me having 18 hours a day to play poker for 3 or 4 years. And the reason you see a lot of younger people getting good at poker quickly is because they can devote all their time to poker. Whereas if you're a little bit older, often you just can't because you have life going on.
I think you can at 40. I think you can, but your path is going to be much different than the 20-year-old, right?
You can be good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you can't be good. I'm saying you're not going to be like elite. You're probably not going to be elite.
You're not going to be elite, but I mean, most nobody is elite.
Almost no one's elite. You're right. You're not gonna
Almost
get there
no
anyway.
one's almost no one's elite anyway. So like, whatever. But like you can be a 40-year-old hobbyist that plays poker and is a winning long-term poker player, but you just have to approach it differently than you would at 20 years old. Like at 20, or at least when I was 19 years old, like I had no money, right? I had no resources to invest in myself. So I have to, the only way that I can get poker coaching is to find somebody who's good at poker and become friends with them, right? Which is exactly what happened in my instance, but we were friends before he got into poker. So it was just a natural transition where like, I just was fortunate enough to have somebody in my life that was driven, motivated, loved cards as much as me, and wanted to, maximize his ability. And that allowed both of us to find success much more quickly. But if you're 40, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, you have a career, you have some more disposable resources. So invest in coaching, invest in somebody that can look over your shoulder and help guide you on your journey, because you've got those resources that the 20-year-old doesn't have. The 20-year-old's got time and energy, right? You don't have much time, and maybe you don't have a ton of energy. So you need to, find a different path that makes sense for where you're at in your journey. But what you said earlier is about turning off your phone. It's just be intentional. I think just be intentional with your life and stop just getting pulled around every which direction by the things that demand your attention, whether it be your phone, the TV, your computer, all these little attention hogs. Everybody's watching this on a computer right now, which is kind of funny. But yeah, like be intentional with where you're spending your energy so that you make better decisions, so that you improve in the areas of your life that you genuinely want to improve on. And you're not just wasting time every single day doing stuff that's not going to do you any good.
For sure. And like you said, if you are a little bit older, usually you don't have as much time, but you have resources. You can use those resources to spend money on a coach or sign up to pokercoaching.com and basically shortcut all of the effort that the young people have to put in terms of time investment, because you've already spent your time to get money. Now, if you're older but you have no money and you have no time, you're in a bit of a rough spot, because then seriously, that's the spot a lot of people are in.
Yeah, I know that's a tough one.
And I mean that's the spot where you have to ask, like, is this even something you need to be doing with your time? But certainly you can get good at poker at any age. And the question was also asked from the point of view of like, do I have the memory capacity or whatever to get good at poker? And I think the answer is yes. Like if your brain functions well, you can be fine. And also, as long as you're realistic about your goals in poker, you'll be fine. Like a lot of people get in their minds that they want to be playing the highest stakes tournaments, or they want to be playing the highest stakes cash games. But I hate to break it to you, almost no one's winning in the highest stakes tournaments or highest stakes cash games. But if you want to win $50 an hour playing 2-5 no limit, I think that's doable for the vast majority of people who want to devote a decent amount of time and or energy and effort getting good at poker. So speaking about that, what is a tip? Let's have one tip / exploit that you would give me, Jonathan Little, if I have to go play 2-5 no limit hold'em today in the casino. What is an exploit that I may not be aware of, or maybe the audience may not be aware of, that will help them win a little bit more money? Something that you see standard recreational players do wrong, or maybe you see standard pros do wrong.
I mean, it's so hard to say like standard recs and standard pros. I would say like one thing is understand mixed frequencies for what they are. Understand
what is a mixed frequency? Let's clarify that.
So like, say you have ace king off on the button and under the gun raises, and you're supposed to call the button some frequency, say 25%, and you're supposed to 3-bet, say 75%, right? Just whenever you look at charts like this online that have all of these mixed frequencies, I would say understand that a lot of your decisions at poker are driven purely on emotions. And so like if you 3-bet the ace king and you win a big pot, the next time you get ace king in that exact scenario, like you're going to be 3-betting it because you had a positive experience. And then the next time, and then if you 3-bet and you lose your stack, well, you're going to be less inclined to get in there the next time, right? You're probably going to take a more passive approach. So I think that just understanding the strategies, simplifying them so that you can either eliminate the mixed strategies or, use some sort of live RNG like Jason Kuhn does. But just understand that, like, you're not random. Nobody's random. And human beings just in their nature are very, we're patternistic. We just fall into patterns very naturally. And if you pay attention, you can see those patterns and exploit those, right? Like, don't worry about being balanced. Don't worry about playing, if you find yourself on the river and you're supposed to bluff some percentage of the time and you have the perfect combination to bluff with, but you just know dude across the table is not folding if you bet, then just don't bet. Like, there's no need to be balanced in spots where you don't think the guy is going to fold rationally, right? Like, logically. And this is another trap, right? It could very easily be that your emotions are telling you not to bluff because you're afraid of them calling when you ought to bluff. So again, this is goes back to the intuitive nature that you're training yourself for these moments to separate what your intuition's telling you versus what your emotions are telling you, which, can be a complicated, nuanced, subtle process. So to answer your original question, one tip, I think get in a practice of meditation. Honestly, I think work on your awareness so that you're able to be aware of how you feel, and you're also aware of the data points and what other folks are doing at the table around you. The more attention you can pay, the better your focus is, the better your win rate's going to be, and that's just how it is.
Yeah, so whenever I'm playing pokers, I'll often have thoughts come to my mind, and immediately my first reaction, I've trained myself to do this, is say, all right, that could be silly. The idea of I lost last time I 3-bet, so I probably shouldn't 3-bet this time. That's a silly thought, right? Because if you're supposed to 3-bet this hand, let's say, and you decide to not 3-bet it because it went poorly last time, that's just asinine. And you have to make sure you realize, all right, this emotional response, because last time went bad, is asinine. So just need to continue making the good play. That said, you also have to be able to look at spots like where you're on the river and you have an obvious bluff hand. If you ran it through the solver, it says bluff it every time. But you know this opponent does not fold on the river very often. That's like a logical thought process of, okay, this guy doesn't like folding on the river, so don't bluff here. But if my last 3 bluffs have failed, maybe not at this table, but at other tables or whatever, the last 3 tournaments I played, and nobody knows that I like bluffing on the river, you should still be bluffing on the river there, even if it failed 3 times in a row. So you have to be able to separate logical thought processes from illogical thought processes, and basically be able to figure out what you are doing and why. And things like meditation will help. I'm certainly not the best at meditating at all, but I think I generally keep a clear mind and a rational thought process. And I think a lot of people instead, they just do whatever they feel like is what it amounts to. They lost last time, so they're not going to do it again this time, because that would be dumb, right? It didn't work last time.
It's emotionally driven.
Yeah, poker is a very long-term game, and you are going to go on streaks where you run really, really hot, and also streaks where you run really, really poorly. And that's okay. Recognize that that's how it goes. All right, so you're a new coach at pokercoaching.com. Can you give us a little bit of a teaser on some of the stuff you are looking forward to teaching to the poker coaching students?
So, teaser. I'll say right now, I have mapped out the next 10 months of webinars in a document, because I wanted the path to be fairly linear, and go in a way that, in my opinion, is high impactful webinar after high impactful webinar that kind of all follow along each other. That isn't to say that when I get into actually building the webinars that I have planned down the road, I don't combine them, or I get feedback that says, here's something that maybe we missed, right? And then fill in those cracks as they go. But basically, I just want to provide a full learning path from the beginning, the most impactful things that you can do to learning how to compete in cash games, and just keep going in that direction in a linear fashion. And I want to make sure that it's learnable and executable too, because I think that a lot of times as coaches, it's, I believe it was Abraham Lincoln who said, if I need a speech that's going to last 10 minutes, then I need like 6 months to prepare. If I need a speech that lasts 30 minutes, I need a month to prepare. And if I need a speech that lasts an hour, I can just do that right now, right? And basically communicating in a easy to understand way in this world where complexity and abstractions are everywhere is a difficult thing to do. And so that's my aim, is to communicate concepts that are impactful, that are valuable in as simple a way as I can, and then giving homework afterwards. So when the webinar ends, giving everybody that attends some sort of actionable thing that they can do on their own time that I believe will give them value in their poker career. And, coaching poker is hard because it's so nuanced. There's so many different elements and aspects of this game. I mean, because you're putting out content all the time, right? And you're able to, because there's so many different areas to learn and to focus on. So, when I'm going to be putting on these webinars, I'm just going to be going at the most impactful things that I've seen generate the most profit in my students' game. And it's going to be a lot of talk on language. It's going to be a lot of talk on the learning path is the first one that I'm doing. And this is kind of just setting the stage for who I am, what you're going to get from attending my webinars, where we're going to go in the future, and why we're going there. Because I think that the path is, it's kind of just step one in the process of being a winning cash game player.
Awesome. Let me actually promote poker coaching while we're talking about it real quick. And then we're going to have a question and answer session here with Brad. So if you have any questions specifically for Brad, type them in the chat box right now. And while you're doing that, click like, click subscribe. I appreciate it. So right now, for all of you here today, we're going to give you $50 off your first month of Poker Coaching Premium. At Poker Coaching Premium, you have access to over 1,025 interactive hand quizzes, like we talked earlier about practicing and getting experience. This is a great way to get experience with a coach sitting over your shoulder, giving you real-time feedback about every decision you make. We have over 250 videos and video classes and webinars, kind of like what Brad's going to be making, so we have a lot of that there. We have over 50 homework webinars where I essentially ask you how you're going to play your entire range in a specific scenario on the pre-flop, flop, turn, and river. And that goes a long way to helping you, again, we talked about intuition, right? Intuitively know what to do in these spots because you will have studied it a lot away from the table. Also, we have a bunch of challenges where every day I will send you a piece of content about a specific form of poker, like our 30-day tournament preparation challenge, the 14-day cash game challenge, and the 7-day 3-betting challenge, because I know a lot of you said that you have a difficult time dealing with 3-bets, right? So make sure you check that out. You can get the $50 off right now at pokercoaching.com/50off. As you see here are our coaches. We have over $50 million in combined live tournament earnings, a whole lot more online, a whole lot of cash game earnings. Great coaches, including me, Faraz Jaka, who just played a WPT cash game last night. That'll be on TV at some point. James Romero, who was in the top 10 live tournament players pre-COVID. Then COVID happened, and now the rankings are all funny because no one's playing live poker anymore. Or very few people are playing live tournaments. We have Bert Stevens, number one online player in the world in tournaments about a year ago. He got rich, took a little time off. Now he's back grinding hard. He's been streaming for us recently. Just the other day, he was streaming for us, and he got heads up in a tournament. I don't know if he won or if he didn't. But anyway, that was pretty cool. And a lot of other coaches bringing a lot of great content to you. Coming up this week on Poker Coaching, we have a webinar with Matt Affleck defending the big blind versus under the gun continuation bets. That's going to be on October 21st. The cash game learning path with Brad here, October 22nd. Check raising flops is the pre-flop raiser with Jonathan Jaffe. If you all do not know Jonathan Jaffe, he is an absolute crusher, maybe the most difficult person I've ever played against in my whole life. He will put you in miserable spots. He'll check raise you out of your seat over and over again with all sorts of nonsense. And he is fun. You have to understand, I go about hiring people who I want to learn from to be coaches, because that goes a long way to making me better at poker. And I'm using that knowledge to help all of you get better at poker. And then also on October 28th, Defending the Big Blind versus C-Bets, lots and lots of hand examples from Matt Affleck. So make sure you check that out. You can get $50 off your first month, pokercoaching.com/50 off. All right, Brad, we have some questions lined up for you. Are you ready?
I am ready, sir.
Let's see. When it comes to cash games, it seems like you get wrecked. Not you, Brad, but Cha here. What are some things that tournament players can do differently when they are approaching cash games, assuming they don't play a ton of cash games?
Get comfortable with playing after the flop. Get comfortable with being deeper in the decision tree. One thing that I know, just looking at the progression from my private students, is that tournament players are going to try to make it a pre-flop game because that's where they're most comfortable. But cash game at 100 big blinds or 200 big blinds is just deep, and you just have to approach it in a different way where you are going to be calling some out of position with a high SPR, and then you have to navigate, right? I think the biggest mistake that I see tournament players make when they transition is like, raising the button with a hand like ace jack off, getting 3-bet from the big blind, and deciding that they're just going to start 4-betting with ace jack, or they're just going to start 4-betting a wide portion of their range and turning them into bluffs, when like calling is totally appropriate and it's going to be the highest CV play. And then, guess what? Poker, as in life, is not always fun, and it is not always a smooth ride. You have to get in the mud, and you have to get dirty, and you have to get comfortable navigating some marginal spots if you want to make it in the cash game streets.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, my dad played a lot of tournaments and would also play cash games on the side, either before the tournament or after the tournament or whatever. And he didn't do so great in cash games, and it was because he would always get top pair and always stack off with it every time. And that's fine in tournaments when you have 20 big blinds, but that's not so fine in cash games where you have 200 big blinds. That's going to be you're going to get wrecked. And that just goes back to learning how to play well after the flop, especially with deep stacks that you may be somewhat uncomfortable with. Irish says he wants you to make videos of you playing online in real time. All right, maybe we'll line that up. That sounds like something logical and reasonable to do. Shout out to Real JPB for winning $16,000 the other day online in a tournament. Congrats to poker coaching student Real JPB. Playing your first live game in a casino. If you're Jason's gonna be playing his first live game in a casino in a few weeks. What kind of adjustments should an online player make to going to play live poker for the first time?
What a question. So like, it's funny that I spoke with a friend of mine, is Gavin. He's a poker coach, 1K, 2K, no limit crusher in the cash game streets. And he was telling me privately that when the first time he went to play poker in a casino, like he just didn't even know the rules, right? Like he didn't know that, he opened playing 500 no limit, and then somebody threw in like $100 chip pre-flop, and he thought that was a raise, and like he shoved before the dealer could make change for this player, right? So just understanding the rules of playing at a casino, and that can save you a ton of money when you're transitioning from the online streets. Like I know that a lot of casinos have a rule where basically you put in one chip and this indicates a call typically. But if you're playing high stakes at some places in like California, there's actually like this thing where if they don't put the chips in the middle, then they don't actually have to pay. So they could like leave the table, get cashed out, and then they're just banned from that casino for life. So like these kind of just little, learn the rules of live poker, how it differentiates itself from online poker, and take care of yourself just in case somebody might shoot an angle or something like that, or try to take advantage of you. Just, I think that's the number one thing, is just familiarize yourself with the rules of live poker first and foremost.
For sure. Also, you want to generally go kind of slowly if you're new to the game, you don't know what's going on, right? You need to make sure you confirm what is happening. Like if anything's unclear to you, like if someone raises to $6 and they fold you, you know what happened. But if someone throws in a $25 chip and says something that you don't hear, ask the dealer. Say, what is that? The dealer will then say something. Wait a second or two, because somebody may object if the dealer got it wrong. If nobody objects, then you're probably good to go. Also, just always confirm what is going on, right? And you'll get used to the rules very quickly. Maybe watch a live poker stream or two. If you're a casino or a casino near where you live has a live poker stream, maybe watch it for an hour and make sure you understand everything that's going on. But make sure you just understand the flow of the game. All right. Can you still... Well, here's a question from Joe, essentially. What do you think of playing poker while having anxiety / being scared to lose? Can you still reach limits like 50-cent dollar, $1, $2 if you are afraid to lose money? This is a tough question because I don't exactly know what having anxiety means in this issue. Like if you have a crippling anxiety disorder, that's very different than if you just don't like losing money, right? But I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, Brad? Neither of us are psychologists.
I think like see a performance coach firstly and understand where the anxiety is coming from and what it means. I think that like a lot of times in life, we feel anxious for reasons that we don't truly understand in situations. The story that really comes to mind when I hear that said is Elliot Rowe, who's ultra expensive hypnotherapist, poker coach for, the best of the best in this business. But there are also hypnotherapists that are not Elliot Rowe that are much more affordable. But he got into hypnotherapy because he had a crippling anxiety, a fear of flying in planes. And it was starting to make an impact in his life because he wasn't able to travel in the way that like he wanted to. So it was, it was holding him back, and he went to see a hypnotherapist and they solved that in 30 minutes. And how they did that was he learned in this 30-minute hypnotherapy session that in his subconscious mind, when he was 3 years old, his dad's business partner actually died in a plane crash. And that caused a lot of suffering amongst his family. And my opinion is that when this child was experiencing this suffering and not able to really understand what was happening, he labeled that suffering as fear, and he labeled that suffering as anxiety. So then as he got older, whenever he thought of flying, he thought of that fear, he thought of that suffering. And you can imagine that anguish that his family felt would be crippling to someone. It would be crippling if they wanted to fly on a plane. And when he realized that that was the root cause of that fear, then he realized, oh, that was grief. That was suffering. It wasn't fear and it wasn't anxiety that my family was experiencing. That allowed him to change the association that he had with that feeling. And then he was able to just get on flights. So first and foremost, the fundamental question is, what's at the root of your anxiety? What's at the root of your fear of losing money? Because until you solve that, it's going to be tough goings in the poker world. But I do think it is a solvable thing. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it's important that you investigate that, not just from a poker sense, but just in your life holistically.
All right, great. Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. If you're having a difficult time right now getting in poker volume, you live in America, you don't have any options to regulated sites, should people be playing on various apps or the unlicensed sites at the moment? What is the best option of the options available for Americans?
Oh man,
assuming you're not going to get up and go to the casino. Right?
You're putting this question on me when I don't even know if you would answer this question. I'm pretty sure I asked you in the last podcast and you deferred.
No, everyone asked me and I always answer. Go ahead. What's your thoughts on this?
Oh, you do? I don't know. Depends on what you want to do. I think that like Ignition's okay because Ignition, it's Bodog, right? Like fundamentally it's Bodog. Bodog's been around a long time, and just through like longevity of it being in the poker space, I think that there's some trust there. But like, no matter where you play, don't keep a ton of money online. Keep as much money online as you're comfortable with, disappearing into the wind, because that's a high likelihood. If you go the app route, I would suggest only advanced players choose the app route. Folks that truly understand the risk that they're taking by entering this unknown arena. And I'm not going to say like don't play on the apps, because maybe there's a spot that's got a bunch of recreational players that's a really good spot where you can have a high earn rate. But just know, like, you got to get paid out, and your money could disappear. The games could be not secure. Your earn rate could disappear through lack of security, and then collusion or real-time assistance or botting. So like in this world, take risks, but ultimately protect yourself and try to plan out for all the eventualities, be on guard. And, if you think something shady is happening, fold your hand, withdraw your money, and move on to something else. But I do think that there's a lot to gain by taking risks, where like, here's the thing. I'm a pro, right? I understand all the risks of the apps. The folks that don't understand the risks, that are like signing up through their local bookie and using them as an intermediary to get money on an app and then play, those games might be better than the games that are more secure. So I don't know. This is sort of like, these are all variables that you're going to have to add up yourself and then just make the best decision you can. But for cash games, my money's on Ignition. The games there are still good. And for coaching, 100% I make all my guys play on Ignition, because on Ignition, you can download your hands 24 hours after the fact, and you can see all of your opponent's hole cards. And that is just huge for learning in general. It's huge for pointing out spots where, like, as a coach, I can tell my student that they're over bluffed, but if my student folds, they don't know until they look that hand up and see exactly how wide villains are bluffing. So yeah, my money's on Ignition for cash games. ACR, I trust ACR about as far as I can throw them. They had a major bot problem with their cash games for many years and didn't do anything about it really until Joey Ingram kind of brought it to their attention. And that to me is just, it's never sat well with me. Maybe they're doing a better job now with it, but to let that go on for years when you have knowledge of the problem and you're not doing anything to fix it, because, well, these bots, for taking a lot of money out of the poker economy, they do a lot for rake. They generate a lot of rake and a lot of income for online poker platforms. So they're not always incentivized to take care of that problem. And it just always, anytime that a platform does something contrary to their players' best interest, it never sits well with me. It's a hard thing for me to forgive. So I'm glad they're doing better now. I wish they would have done better before. But yeah, that's where I stand on the available online platforms. Global Poker, I don't really know much about. I've played there. I think that their system is actually structured in a way that is legal. So I think Global Poker is another decent option if you're going to go for it.
Okay, cool. How do you deal with cash games where people raise very big pre-flop, like let's say 7 big blinds pre-flop, and then they get 6 callers? What adjustments should you make to your default strategy?
For my default strategy, assuming that depths are fairly deep, firstly, I mean, this is a multi-way game, right? Don't be afraid to play multi-way pots with hands that play well multi-way. So pocket pairs, suited connectors, suited aces. Don't feel compelled to use like a 3-better fold type strategy. Be fine with taking flops multi-way, then making decisions from there. I've often found that multi-way pots are a lot easier to navigate than heads-up pots anyway, because the actions are so much more pure. So that's number one. And then number two is like, when you do 3-bet big and 3-bet a tight value-heavy range, especially if you're going to be getting that many callers. Like, and if you have aces and you raise and 7 people call, well, you're still a favorite. You still have an equity advantage. So, proceed in a way that allows you to navigate multi-way pots well. So like basically train yourself on playing and navigating multi-way pots and understanding what you should and what you should not do. I think that those are some pretty clear first steps.
Well, let's take a look at a hypothetical hand. Let's say someone middle position raises to, well, let's say we're playing $1, $2. They make it $14. Hijack, cutoff, button, small blind call. We have ace king in the big blind with $200 stack, 100 big blinds.
Okay.
What are we doing?
Well, where was the original raiser?
Call it low jack seat or something like that. Middle position. Middle position, 4 callers.
And he makes it 14.
So pot's now like $70 or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm making it 80, 90.
Would you go all in instead out of the $200 stack?
You can. You can. It's just, I don't think it matters very much at like this specific stake that folks are going to be able to discern that there's a difference when you're like shoving and then making it 80. Basically, like with ace king, I want to make sure that, I'm never shoving with aces here ever, right?
Right.
So like if I do shove, I don't think it's like the worst thing you can do, but I also think it can kind of give an indicator as to the strength of your hand. And like if my aces and my kings and my queens are just making it 80, then I want to make it 80 with ace king so that they all kind of look similar. And that's just how I like structuring my strategy so that you're not unbalanced where you're like shoving in this spot and you always have ace king, because that could be a problem in and of itself.
I mean, you could shove queens, jacks, tens, and ace king, and there's not a whole lot they can do about it, right?
True.
The pot's already big. And then you could re-raise smaller with aces, kings, and like ace, jack suited or something,
Yeah.
Are you ever finding spots like that in games to be bluffing? Or are we just doing it purely for value because we think we lack fold equity? I guess that's the question. Have you ever found spots where people are making it 7x preflop and then folding to 3-bets?
Yeah, for sure.
So if that's the case, we should be bluffing sometimes, right?
Right.
Maybe a lot.
And this is where the awareness comes in, right? Like, have you seen is this person opening more frequently than they ought to be? And are the players behind playing in a way that you believe to be honest? So like nobody's flatting with like queens or kings this initial open raise. And like here's an easy situation that has come up multiple times. Somebody structures their preflop strategy as a limp raise strategy with their like aces and kings, right? So I see them do this a couple of times where they limp, somebody isolates, and then they raise, right? Well, now if they open under the gun and get 4 callers, yeah, this is a great bluffing opportunity because I know that the top of their range, they're limp raising with it the majority of the time. So I'm most likely able to generate some fold equity by 3-bet bluffing. Then that's a player that I'm going to attack. But I'm going to choose the players that I attack to bluff there with some previous data points that lead me to believe their range is weaker than maybe specific other players.
So if you're playing a game where people call preflop raises very frequently, what are some hands that people normally play that you would no longer play when everyone folds to you? Like, let's say we're in the low jack seat and we have, I don't know, whatever, ace 9 offsuit, or 9-8 suited, or like, are there some hands you're going to be prioritizing over other hands if you know people like calling frequently? And are you going to adjust your preflop raising size or overall strategy much?
So you mean the raise, like my raise first in strategy if everybody folds to me in the low jack?
Right. And everybody gets acts kind of a calling stationy. Because that is what happens in a lot of small stakes live games. People just like to see the flop.
I can tell you that I've played in a million of these games where players are playing way too many hands pre-flop. And never am I adjusting my strategy to play tighter. Never, like, I want, like, if somebody has a loss rate of like 50 big blinds per 100, and I have the opportunity to get involved and mix it up against a passive player that I know I'm better than, I'm probably widening my range because they're calling too frequently. And the reasoning is if they're calling too frequently, it's going to give me opportunities to exploit them post-flop in a way that I can't against better players. So like anytime there's a table full of bad players, I'm looking to mix it up and get involved as frequently as I can, because I know that the more often I get involved with these guys, the more money I'm going to make. So that's how I do it.
I think what happens to a lot of people is they raise their normal range. Like, let's say they raise, I don't know, king, jack offsuit, and they get 4 callers, and it comes jack high, jack 10-6, let's say. If they bet and someone raises, they often don't know what to do because now they're playing some big pot. But the interesting thing is, like, if your opponents are generally passive and call happy, when they do raise you, they probably have a pretty strong range, right?
Yep.
And if they have a pretty strong range, maybe that king jack's not so good on king or on jack 10-6. And I think a lot of people have a difficult time assessing their opponent's actual strategies because a lot of people call way too often pre-flop. Maybe they call too often on the flop, but they don't actually do a whole lot of raising too often. Now, of course, some people will raise too often. They'll take any pair and they'll raise it, they all in or whatever. But I don't think that's most people in the small stakes games. So you have to be willing to bet for value kind of wide against calling stations and then fold when they apply additional aggression, right?
And you have to be aware of your range. Like, you know, if I have king jack there and I'm betting out 4 ways, I mean, king jack is likely to be the bottom of my value range. You know, maybe queen jack is the true bottom, but like king jack is not doing much better than queen jack. So like, if I know that I'm at the bottom of my c-bet range and I get raised and I realize like I've got 10s here, I've got jacks, I've got jack 10 suited, I've got, you know, if the flop is jack 10-6, I've got 6s, I have aces, I have kings, I have queens. Well, then it makes it a much easier fold. And then you can also play hands that are like king queen that, you know, have a Broadway draw, or maybe king queen suited that has a back door. Maybe you have ace queen suited there where your opponent doesn't raise a ton and you can peel to, you know, try to gin the Broadway gut shot with a backdoor flush draw as well. So really it's just having an idea of like what your value range actually looks like there and understanding that like folding the bottom of your value range is okay. I think that helps me navigate those situations a lot better than if I'm like, oh, I've got king jack, I've got top pair and I bet. What do I do versus a raise, right? Like, I don't know if I'm just using that information because I don't know how I'm playing the rest of my range. And I feel like if I fold here, maybe I'm just over folding and I'm leaving myself open to exploitation. But when you realize like, oh, this is somewhat the bottom of my range, you can fold and you can be pretty comfortable with doing so.
Awesome. Cool. So I know we didn't get to all the questions, but we answered a lot of them. I want to thank all of you for typing those in. Brad, where can people learn more about you? Where can they sign up for your email list and listen to your podcast and all of that? I know you have a lot going on.
Yeah, chasingpokergreatness.com. It's being renovated as we speak. The website is, as I've been told by one of my private students who's a rock star designer in real life, the website has a lot of room for improvement, right? When I told him one night, I think I told him, I don't think it's that bad, man. You know, I don't think it's that bad. And he just texted me back immediately and said, you know, I didn't think I was that bad at poker. And so I started getting coaching from you either. I was like, okay, well
it turns out we're poker players, not website designers.
Exactly. So like I'm renovating that, but you can head to chasingpokergreatness.com, hop on the email newsletter. I put a lot of energy and thought into making the daily newsletters as valuable as I can and as entertaining and fun to read as I can, with a little link to private coaching and stuff like that. And I have like an exclusive round 2 with Berkey, an exclusive round 2 with Split Suit Sweeney on jumpstarting your poker career, and access to my private Slack community for joining the email newsletter. So you get a bunch of bonuses, and you know, you get to hear what I put together on a daily basis.
So I don't know if people know this, but you write an email newsletter. It's every day, right?
Well, every weekday. So
5 days a week. That's a lot.
It is a lot. It's a lot, and I'll say it's a lot to do it in a way that makes people happy to open it, right? That makes people like happy to see that message in their inbox, because that's what I'm going for, right? I'm going for when you see an email from me in your email inbox that you're excited to look at it because it's entertaining and you're going to learn something. And it's really, really, really tough to perform like that on a day-to-day basis. I think I'm getting a little better. People reply to these newsletters that I send out. And by the way, I am selling in every single one. There's a link, there's a call to action to some specific thing. But I get replies saying like, man, this really resonated with me. Thank you for this newsletter. And I think that's fairly rare in the digital marketing space, that I know I've never responded to a marketing email in my entire life. So I think that that's a pretty good indicator that I'm on the right track. And yeah, I think if you check out the blog at chasingpokergreatness.com, that's, those are some past newsletters that I've sent out. If you like those, just hop on.
I mean, I will point out that even though, like you say, these are marketing emails, you're adding a lot of value in the emails, just like for free. Like this show right here, right? We're trying to sell pokercoaching.com to you, but we're also trying to add an immense amount of value. And you're going to find, for everyone out here, if you want to just help people, just write newsletters or make videos or do whatever you want to do, whatever you're passionate about and good at, and you can help other people with, do that. Create stuff. It's fun. It's rewarding. And I mean, maybe you make a business out of it, maybe you don't, but you'll enjoy the process. It's a lot of fun. I mean, you probably enjoy writing the emails, right, Brad? I mean, I'm sure sometimes it's tough, but
it's tough. Like it's hard. I like the finished product. And like, that's the thing. Like, lots of things in life are really hard to do. They're really challenging, but like, only when you break out the other side and you have something that you can look back on with pride, do you feel the happiness and the fulfillment. And so they are hard. I'm not going to say that I'm like, I love it when I'm in the middle of it and I'm like trying to edit it, 10 times to get it just perfect. But I love the response and I love how they turn out. So, it's, like it's all about trust, really. Like there's a direct correlation, like I think proximity is directly correlated to influence. This is something that I've learned and that I use in my own life. So like, if you're close to poker crushers, they're going to influence you much more dramatically than if they're farther away from your inner circle. And when you trust somebody because you hear from them, you read them, you know that they have your best interest in mind, even if they are selling private coaching, what they're really interested in is making an impact in your poker journey. That allows you both to just make gains in a way that you can't when you're not buying into the process and you don't trust this person that you're hearing from. So yeah, everything that I do and that I put out that's free is really to build trust. And the only way to build trust is to add value, improve people's lives, give them a little chuckle in the email, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, for sure. And you do a great job at it. All right, stay on the line. I'm going to talk about poker coaching for one more second. And thanks for the great interview. It was a lot of fun.
My pleasure, man.
All right, let me talk to you about poker coaching real quick before we wrap it up. Like I said earlier, you can get $50 off your first month of poker coaching premium, including brand new webinars from Brad. Check it out at pokercoaching.com/50off. As you see, I've access to over 1,000 interactive quizzes, 275 video classes and webinars, going through some very nitty-gritty topics that you must understand to crush poker. Also, we have over 50 homework webinars, and I do a new one every single month that many students participate in. They enter their answers, I go through them, and it's a great learning experience. Also, we have lots of challenges that will ensure that you are good at specific aspects of poker and you will work hard on your poker skills every day. So check it out, pokercoaching.com/50off. Thanks again to Brad. Thank you very much for being here today. I appreciate it. If you like this, click like, click subscribe. I'd appreciate it. And I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.